Welcome to Political Brew. I'm Phil Hirschkorn. Our topics this week: the deal brokered by Susan Collins and Angus King that ended the federal government shutdown, the scramble to fill Jared Golden's seat in the 2nd Congressional District, the plan to build more housing in the Maine governor's race, and Portland's new $19 an hour minimum wage approved by city voters on Election Day. My guests are Genius Black, an author and the host of Maine's Black Future podcast, published by the Maine Monitor, and Joe Bruno, a former state legislator and House Republican leader, as well as a longtime selectman and school board member in Raymond. Guys, thanks for being here. Yes. Have a lively discussion. Let's start with this. The 43-day longest ever federal government shutdown came to an end this week with the leadership of both U.S. Senators from Maine, Susan Collins and Angus King. Collins, as chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, co-authored the bipartisan bill to fund government through January, as well as SNAP and veterans programs for a full year, while also guaranteeing furloughed federal workers back pay. King, along with New Hampshire Senators Jeanne Shaheen and Maggie Hassan, all former governors, reached the deal to schedule a vote next month on extending enhanced subsidies for Affordable Health Care Act premiums, which was the reason the Democrats had refused to fund the government in the first place. King, an independent who caucuses with Democrats, had refused to support that position and said in an interview on MSNBC this week, the strategy failed.
Standing up to Donald Trump didn't work. It actually gave him more power. And then secondly, and I've been a big supporter of the ACA, the idea of forcing the Republicans to the table to negotiate on that issue by virtue of a shutdown didn't work.
So we'll talk about that, but let's also add this. Senator Collins says she's for extending the ACA subsidies, but only if there's an income cap on eligibility, as she told us in an interview.
I really think that we need to put a cap. Right now, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, a family of 4 in Augusta, Maine, making $325,000 can still qualify for a taxpayer-subsidized tax credit for the insurance.
So a lot to chew on there. Let's start with the two people who are our senators, and then we'll talk about people who want to be senator and what they said. So Susan Collins, Joe, just now saying she would go for the ACA subsidy extensions, but only if there's an income cap. We heard her example there. What do you think about that?
Absolutely agree with her. I mean, we have to remember that we keep hearing that the subsidies are going away, and that is absolutely not true. It's the enhanced subsidies that are going away that were put in place during COVID with an expiration date of this year. So people are still going to get subsidies. It's just not going to be as much as they were. You know, it's the enhanced subsidies we're talking about, that little microset. But the fact is, people making a lot of money were getting subsidized for their health insurance. What about the employees who are paying for their health insurance? Why aren't we worried about those? We've had employees leave the private market and go on the ACA to get subsidies and get a better deal for their insurance than they could get through their employer. And there's something wrong when we do that.
Genius, what about that? Should the cap, if it is extended, we don't know that, should it be limited to lower and middle income people? And what about that sort of provocative point by Angus King, who normally votes with Democrats, to say the whole strategy didn't work?
Well, I think he's actually correct that the strategy didn't work. You have to find a way to move forward, and the pressure that they were trying to apply did not create the intended result. That being said, I don't think I see it exactly like Susan Collins or like my partner here, I'm going to call you that. I think that it's not a small subset of people that will be losing some subsidies. I just don't see that micro subset as being that exact same thing. We can talk more about that. I think this is a broad issue. So for me, I see that when we didn't get what we were looking for, we decided to move forward. I'm still super nervous about the conversation that's going to happen in December. I don't trust it. I'm just being honest. I'm not saying that it's completely bad faith, but my sense, starting off talking about, we want to put a cap on it. It's not that I'm against caps, but that's some of the first points you're making. I think it's the wrong direction.
It's interesting you don't trust it, because I would say that Governor Janet Mills told me this week she thinks the shutdown ending vote was a, quote, lousy deal. And her Senate primary opponent, Graham Plattner, agrees, as he told reporters in his first press conference this week in Brewer. Let's listen to both.
Much of anything to extend those tax credits, even just for a year. They can keep talking about it, but a commitment to talk about it in December, to put it on the calendar, it's just vacuous.
I would have done what the majority of the caucus did, which was hold the line. I mean, my frustration here is not with anyone who voted against this. My frustration is those who voted for it.
So I'm going to just go back to you, Joe. You're on the opposite side here, but they're both on the same side as Democrats. They would have voted no.
They shut down the government and were hurting millions of people. Millions of people were hurt by this shutdown. Whether you were traveling on an airplane, maybe to go to a funeral or go visit your mother like I did, and you're sitting there watching the board hoping your flight's not canceled. What did it accomplish? Absolutely nothing. It accomplished nothing but hurt millions of people.
And they sort of reiterate the point you just made a minute ago, which was a promise to vote in December. Give me a break. Governor Mills saying also in my interview, they can't walk and chew gum at the same time? Should they have done both at the same time?
I think so, and I do agree that it's a failure of overall Congress. I don't put it on Republicans or just Democrats. I'm so tired of that rhetoric. I see it as a failure of Congress altogether. Yes, people in America were being hurt. Again, I don't trust exactly what will happen in December, but I do think it puts a magnifying lens, it puts it up on the table, it puts it in front of everyone, right? That we need to dig into this, and we'll say promises have been made. Sometimes we don't even get that out in the public. So not that everything was achieved, but something was achieved. There was motion, but we just didn't hit the goal.
Well, I am hoping that we talk about health care reform, not these subsidies. These subsidies don't work. Whenever you have to subsidize something, it means it doesn't work. Let's talk about health care reform and to make the system better.
Okay, and we'll have more on this in the future. Of course, we have a vote coming, we think, next month on the ACA. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Political Brew. Coming up next, the wide open race in Maine's 2nd Congressional District. Ever since Congressman Jared Golden announced 10 days ago he would not seek a 5th term after all, a game of mental musical chairs has been underway, wondering who might enter the race for a rare open seat representing Maine's 2nd District in the U.S. House of Representatives. The first to step up, Democrat Jordan Wood. The 36-year-old from Lewiston, a former congressional staffer who worked in Washington for a decade, said he's withdrawing from the Senate race he launched in April for the House race. He's been running but not gaining a lot of traction like fellow first-time candidate Graham Plattner. We broke the story of his decision on News Center Maine, and in an interview, Wood told me his reasoning for the switch.
What voters are looking for are leaders that are going to go to Washington, fight political corruption and support democracy reform, but then deliver on the affordability crisis. Voters are looking for the next generation to step up and lead. I think I represent that.
In reaction, a spokesman for former Governor Paul LePage, who's 76, seeking the Republican nomination, said in CD2, as liberal Californians' chief of staff, Jordan Wood led an office which opposed small business 80% of the time and pushed extreme policy driving up inflation and infringing on Second Amendment. Mainers will pick a job creator, Paul LePage, who will grow the economy and push back on high prices. Meanwhile, State Auditor Matt Dunlap, who's seeking the Democratic nomination in CD2, said this doesn't change our campaign or our commitment to running to deliver people's agenda of affordable health care, child care, and living wages for working families. Maine people deserve leaders who show up, listen, and are always accessible to their communities. Genius, what do you think of that? Dunlap was already going to challenge Jared Golden in a primary. Now he's so far just him and Jordan Wood.
I'm feeling like Dunlap has a lot of history. His name recognition isn't huge, but I do think he has a lot of experience to bring. Jordan Wood is newer. I think he was all over the state, talking to people, showing his energy, his ideas, and I think that, even with this switch, that could work on his behalf. I actually think that Congressional District 2 leans towards Trump. I get it. But also, when you have moderate Democrats and people who can make sense to people all over that part of Maine, I think their minds will remain somewhat open, because we do not need an echo and a mirror of Donald Trump.
What about Paul LePage? Seems to have, for now, the field to himself.
Well, what about ageism? You're hearing Jordan Wood say if you're old, you need to step away because you're too old. Where's ageism in all that? Isn't that one of the big Democrat things? As an older man myself, I think I have plenty of experience, as does Paul LePage. And what's wrong with experience? With experience comes many good things. You learn things as you grow older that you don't know when you're 36 years old.
Right, and Matt Dunlap, 60, has been a legislator and longtime Secretary of State.
Now the state auditor.
I mean, Jordan Wood's never held any elective office.
Exactly. And Jordan Wood just moved back to Maine not that long ago. Maine people don't like that. And you know, when Genia said that a moderate Democrat, Jordan Wood is not a moderate Democrat. We might consider Matt Dunlap a moderate Democrat to some extent, but Jared Golden was the definition of a moderate Democrat, which is why he got elected. So here's the problem you have. You're trying to replace a moderate Democrat with an ultra-liberal Democrat. And that's a problem in the second district.
Let's just take a quick look at some other people that people are mentioning who might get in. First of all, we have former State Senate President Troy Jackson from Allagash, current Secretary of State Shenna Bellows from Manchester. They both live in the district, and State Senator Joe Baldacci from Bangor. All three have run for Congress before. And then on the Republican side, names that are being mentioned include State Senator and Republican Senate Leader Trey Stewart from Presque Isle, and State House Representative, House Representative, I should say, Laura Libby, who's from Auburn. Do you like some of the alternative Democrats who might get in? And then, Joe, I'd like you to weigh in on the alternative Republicans.
I mean, I do like Shenna Bellows. I think she has, the applicable experience. But in my brain, I'm sorry, I'm being distracted because of what you said about ageism.
Okay.
I just want to bring back to that real quick.
It's a wide open conversation.
Right, and because we're comparing all these candidates, right?
That's right.
And sometimes with very little information to go on.
Candidates and potential candidates.
Right, because they won't all, right?
We don't know.
And I just want to point out, because you're right, Democrats, as well as other humans who aren't Democrats, talk about ageism and deal with ageism. But ageism has to do with looking at someone's age, particularly older people, even younger, but mostly older, and incorrectly associating things with them, right, based off stereotypes. That's ageism. Looking at someone who's out of date with what they're talking about now, bringing back old things that didn't work in the past and that are still divisive, that's not ageism, that's making good decisions. I just want to put that out there. So, yes.
That's fine. Should other people get in the Republican primary, or just clear the field for LePage because he's the best known guy and he won CD2 in 2022, even though he got romped in the governor's race?
Yeah, Paul LePage, it's his nomination. You know, the people you're talking about will not jump in. There's no way, especially Laura Libby, who just lost that referendum on voter ID. That was her creation. So that takes away a lot of her sheen that she had. So it's Paul LePage's race. I mean, and then looking at Jordan Wood, he raised $3 million for that Senate race. $3 million in the House race goes a long way.
Well, he spent $2 million of it so far.
But still, you got $1 million in your kitty already, and nobody else is going to raise that kind of money.
And I should say, when I mentioned Troy Jackson and Shenna Bellows, they've obviously announced that they're running for governor and haven't, said publicly that they're going to change their focus. But how do you look at the ability of any Democrat who's not Jared Golden, who's not a military veteran, who is maybe more to the left than he is, holding on to that seat?
Yeah, so I was looking at Troy Jackson, and I was actually doing earlier a comparison between Troy Jackson and Shenna Bellows, and kind of just like what they're about, because they haven't exactly been in the same seat of power. And the things that stood out to me about Troy Jackson is that, again, he's more in the middle. He's not super left. And he purposefully appeals to working people that are in Maine who aren't aiming for the high intellectual to run everything for them. I think that could bode well for him. I don't really know where it's going to go. It's so broad right now. I hate to say it, but name recognition is still the thing that's just pumping people up. We can act like it's way more than that. But I think as we keep talking, people make mistakes in front of people and people have wins in front of folks. People will start to settle into who they're going to pick.
Okay, and Joe Baldacci, I should just mention.
I was going to say, Joe Baldacci has name recognition.
And his brother was governor. He has said, he told the Portland Press-Herald that he's waiting for Troy Jackson to decide before he decides. So more on that in the coming weeks. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, Maine's housing shortage and what some gubernatorial candidates want to do to fix it. The cost of housing, whether you rent or own, is a major pocketbook issue in Maine and a focus of candidates running for governor. This week, Democrat Hannah Pingree unveiled her plan to accelerate construction. She'd have the state invest $100 million a year in partnership with developers, fund 1,000 apprenticeships a year in the industry, impose a 90-day deadline for the state to approve construction permits, while aiming to reduce evictions and eliminate veteran homelessness. Here's what Pingree told me when I asked her how those investments would work.
We have nonprofit developers, for-profit developers, we have communities, we have small groups in towns like mine that work to build housing. So this is about partnering and figuring out how do we really leverage the best of the private sector to get this done.
23 report by Pingree's department when she worked for Governor Mills, seen here at a housing project groundbreaking in Westbrook this week, estimated the state had a shortage of 84,000 housing units. Under Mills's watch, 6,000 have been built, are under construction, or are in the pipeline. What do you think of Hannah Pingree's housing plan?
So it's a plan, and it's being put forth now, and I'm taking it as such. Nothing has happened. However, I really like it in terms of what she's focused on. I like the broadness. When it comes to housing, I think people overskip fixing up the conditions for individuals that are looking for housing. Like, so for instance, apprenticeships, incentivizing young people, people that are 25 and 30 years old, to get into the industry where you build and where you maintain and where you learn and where you have high skills at that. It's not just about landlords and rent prices and things like that. You need to be, like, if we're going to get 20, 30, 40,000 more units over these coming years, you have to influence the industry in more ways than just renters and landlords. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that she's talking about $100 million in terms of investment and partnering with people. I don't know how realistic that is. I don't know how that's being received by the people she might be partnering with, but I like it. It's pervasive. It's bold. I like the boldness as well. I'm seriously tired of things that move so slow and soft that people aren't sure if it's making a difference, and there are a lot of unhoused people in Maine.
Joe, what do you think of her plan or the problem in general and what we need?
There's two things that struck me. First is $100 million a year. Where is that coming from? Now, knowing Hannah very well, we served together, she doesn't mind spending money. And so $100 million, taxpayers are going to be responsible for paying that back. So that's the first thing. $100 million a year is a lot of money. And she'll probably want to go bond it and ask the voters in Maine to bond it. And Maine voters tend to approve all kinds of bonds. The second thing I noticed was we're going to make the state do approvals in 90 days. Well, what are you going to do about the local planning boards? You know, are you going to just say this is a top-down directive and we're going to tell you what to do at the local level? So that becomes a problem for me. So, you know, Hannah's the one who came up with $200 million in subsidies from windmills and solar panels. And where are we now? We're the highest electric rate in the whole country. So that's the kind of thinking that the Democrats have. If we just throw money at it, we're going to solve this problem. Why don't we let the free market take over? Why don't we let developers come in, instead of tying their hands every time they want to build a project, let's let them go. You will see building if it's feasible, but you can't force people to do it.
Right, some of this would be market rate housing, some of it would be, quote, affordable housing, which caps the cost based on a local area's median income. You know, we've already had some changes. Governor Mills signed a law, which Speaker Fecto wrote. Speaker Fecto, by the way, is endorsed Hannah Pingree, which changed some of the zoning, which did force local communities to allow more than just single-family homes on lots, for instance. And there have also been some tax credits to make give developers incentives to do both kinds of housing, particularly affordable housing. Mm-hmm. Did you like those steps? Do you think those would work, or other steps like that would work and help us, you know, build our way out of this problem?
I think we need more steps. Tax credits, rent caps. I've seen multiple things over recent years. I don't think it's enough. So do I like the measures thus far? Yes. I think we're going to have to spend some money. I also think Republicans like to spend money. I'm thinking about ICE right now. They will shove money at something when they believe in it, just like Democrats. So that's not unique. I think that I don't know exactly how to fix this, but saying you like to spend money is not a fix. Somebody's going to spend money. Let's figure out how to do it.
And let me mention, Hannah Pingree's not the only gubernatorial candidate with a plan. For instance, Dr. Nirav Shah wants to have a GI Bill to help people in Maine with their down payment. Jonathan Bush on the Republican side just put out a video this week lamenting the local building codes. I forget which town, but it was a story of a man who milled his own lumber, but it couldn't pass the coding test in his community, sort of the outrageous bureaucratic stumbling blocks that still exist to build housing.
Yeah, exactly. We need to get people all on the same page and say, here's an opportunity to build, here's some land, let's build something here. But instead we put all these roadblocks up and developers are discouraged. When you have rent control and price controls, that discourages building. That's why we haven't seen a huge push and all these buildings happening, even though we have a huge shortage. And who are the people looking for housing now? The elderly, because they can't afford to stay in their house anymore because property taxes are so high. So they're looking to go to senior communities and have affordable rent so they can live out their life.
Many more than the elderly are desperately seeking housing right now. I'm going to have to say that's inaccurate.
Well, that's not inaccurate. We are the oldest state in the nation. All you have to do is go to some of the housing, senior housing places. They have waiting lists of 5 to 10 years because people can't afford their property taxes anymore.
I agree. It's not inaccurate. I just don't know that it's the top consideration. But okay.
Let's leave it there.
Yeah.
When we come back after this quick break, we're going to take a look at Portland's rising minimum wage. Portland is once again making major economic policies by referendum, this time the minimum wage. On Election Day, 63% of city voters approved the wage going up to $19 an hour, $4 above the current state minimum wage and $2.50 an hour higher than New York City's. But it will be phased in over 3 years. As you can see here, it goes up to $16.75 in January, $17.75 in January 2027, and then $19 an hour in January of 2028. Portland Mayor Mark Dion is among those who are concerned.
If I'm a business looking to put a business into place, do I go to Westbrook or do I go to Portland?
Retailers, restaurant owners, gallery owners, small businesses are really going to face a crunch.
Well, Genius, you've done a lot of work in the entrepreneurial world. As someone who employs people and pays wages and people you associate with, is this going to be a problem?
It can be a problem, potentially. I think for some businesses, more of a problem than others. I think there's a difference in challenging businesses and discouraging them from growing. I think that's a critical thing to look at because sometimes, like if me and you had a spirited conversation, we might challenge each other and grow because of the challenge. That's different from us discouraging each other from talking or participating, right? It's a difference. And the reason I say this is that when we look at the minimum wage going up, Quincy Hensel from the Chamber of Commerce in Portland, a lot of respect for her. She has her finger on the pulse in an amazing way. She talked about it being a challenge for local businesses, likely and probably, and I agree, but a challenge gives you a chance to step up. What we need for jobs and for nonprofits, for-profits, for people, for citizens is better opportunity. So we need these businesses, these entrepreneurs like myself and other people to step up. What I notice is that people in that clip, people are talking about how hard it would be for the businesses. They're not talking about how hard it is for the employees already. No, how much are you quantifying the improvement via all of these employees? If 1 in 5 people in Portland will see an increase in an improvement because of this, please don't just tell me how bad it will be for the businesses. What about all the employees?
We have an affordability crisis.
We do. How do you combat it other than giving people more money somehow, whether they earn it or whatever? So just the one-sided look at it for me lets me know that they're not really being fair.
What about
not fair, just not fully aware in the communication.
Well, we're going to have less employees because when you raise, as a business, what you look at your salary line. This is how much I can spend this year and still be in business. Well, you're going to look and go, I can't afford to have, let's say, 100 employees. I'm only going to have 80 employees now because I need to meet that line, and you raised all my wages without my say-so. You forced me to pay more, even though the job is not worth that much. So what you're going to hurt are these small retail shops and the mom and pop stores who employ high school kids. Now, high school kids, we all grew up working as high school kids. We got paid minimum wage. That's what we got paid. But some high school kids are not worth $19 an hour. And so what you're going to do is you're going to strangle a job situation in Portland, and people are going to have less jobs to look for. And businesses will move. Businesses are transportable, and that's what's going to happen. Now, do I feel for people who don't make enough money to live on? Sure. But there are other ways to solve that problem. Educate yourself more, rise up the ladder of the business you're working for, do those things, and you may be able to afford where you're living. But when we look at young people now, they don't want to buy a house because they can't afford it. The median house purchasing went from the 30s, they're now into their 40s because you can't afford housing here anymore.
Can I say, my son, who is 21, last time we were moving, he was about 20. And as we were thinking about different cities to move to from South Portland at the time, one of the things he did research on and came back to me and said, Daddy, I don't want to move here, here, or here. And I said, why? Because of the median income there. And like based on my skills, how much money I'll be making when I get hired. I instantly avoided those cities. Instantly. Didn't even look anymore. Because me and my son don't want to go there because he can't make enough money. I might be able to make enough money, but he can't. And so right now we can talk about the businesses all day, but what we're overlooking is what about all the talented people all over the state of Maine who will move to Portland to work at these businesses? You're not mentioning those. You're not mentioning how the bottom line of the business will change with more talented people. When you pay people to have better mental health, they can take care of their families better, and they're not getting evicted, they are more productive, they're safer, they're more secure, they don't call out as much. You're not talking about that. You're talking about being forced to pay more. What about being challenged to treat people more like humans? There are differing ways to look at this, and I think the balance has to be struck.
Well, I will tell you, I treat my employees very well. I pay them more than the minimum wage already. But you know what? If you force me to pay more than what I can afford, I'm going out of business, or I'm going to sell to a competitor.
In the free market, new businesses come in and replace the ones who couldn't make it.
That's not going to happen.
Republicans love that.
That doesn't happen, genius. And people are going to move to Portland for $3 an hour more. That's not how it works. People choose to live in an area because they like the area.
Just briefly, this is not the first time Portland has done, as I said in the introduction, a major economic decision by referenda. We have rent control, we have a housing ordinance, which raised the minimum of affordable housing that developers are required to do, and as a result, many developers are building less in Portland.
Right.
Is this a smart way to make public policy, whether you agree with it or disagree with it?
It's the Democratic Socialists of Maine that are pushing these referendums. When you look who's behind these referendums, that's who's doing it. So Portland's become a socialist city. That's what's going on. And if you're going to tell me I'm wrong, I can guarantee you it was the Democratic Socialists who did this, and Ethan Strimling and his crew did the rent control thing, and development. $182,500 is the penalty if you don't put in affordable housing when you're a builder. Come on.
Genius, very quickly, the last word. Maybe the right policy, but is it the right approach to do it through referendum?
I'm a fan of the referendums because it takes it straight to the people. I understand the point you made. I'm not going to say everything you're saying is right or wrong, but it has been proven to work in Portland. Our people, I believe they pay attention. I'm big on civic engagement, civic knowledge, and awareness. But we skip a lot of other things. We take it straight to the people and let them have their hands on it. I'm a fan of that. And I remain a fan of that.
Great. We'll wrap it up there. That's all for this edition of Political Brew. I want to thank my guests, Joe Bruno and Genius Black. And we'll have, I'm sorry, I've got to do that again because I don't know what I'm reading here. I assume we can fix that in edit. Am I supposed to do morning report is next? I usually don't say that. Okay, I'm going to do that again. Sorry. I do say that? Can you scroll through it again? I'm sorry. The weekend morning report is back right after this, but that's not what goes on the stream. I know what I'm going to do. I'm sorry for that error. I'll just do it again. Should I turn or what should I do? Should I start looking at them again, or that's not going to work? Okay. All right. Genius Black, Joe Bruno, thank you for being my guest this week. That's all for Political Brew. I'm Phil Hirschkorn. Have a great weekend.